Stop. Whatever you're doing right now, stop. Because at 11:47 p.m. Eastern Time, something shifted in the heavenly realm. And if you're watching this message at this very moment in the quiet desperation of another sleepless night, it's because your name was whispered in the throne room of God. This is not a coincidence. For months you've felt it, haven't you? That strange pulling in your chest. The restlessness that no amount of prayer seemed to settle. The sense that invisible hands were rearranging the very fabric of your existence while you slept. You thought you were going crazy. You thought God had forgotten you. But what if I told you that everything you've been feeling, every midnight hour of confusion, every morning of unexplained exhaustion was actually heaven preparing you for the most dangerous spiritual reset of your lifetime? What if everything they told you about spiritual warfare was only half the truth? See, there are forces, ancient principalities that have been tracking your prayers. They've been monitoring your faithfulness. They know something about you that you're only beginning to discover. They know that deep in your spiritual DNA lies a frequency so pure, so powerful, that when it's fully activated, it threatens their entire kingdom. That's why they tried to silence you through isolation. That's why they whispered lies about your age, your relevance, your purpose. They needed you to believe you were forgotten, overlooked, past your prime. But tonight, right now, God is pulling back the veil. And I need to tell you something that's going to sound impossible. The very trials that nearly broke you weren't random attacks. They were divine preparation. Heaven was calibrating your spiritual frequency, tuning your soul like a violin string. Because what's about to be released through you requires a depth of character that only comes through the crushing. Before we go any deeper, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, if you feel led to plant seeds into this harvest, know that every gift, whether $5 or $50, helps us reach another forgotten warrior in the midnight hour. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. 3 days ago, something extraordinary happened in the realm of the Spirit. The Ancient of Days opened a scroll with your name written in fire. And what was written there about your true identity, your hidden authority, your end-time assignment sent shockwaves through both heaven and hell. The angels began to sing. The demons began to scream because they all recognized the same terrifying truth. You were never meant to fade quietly into the background. You were forged in the secret place for such a time as this. And tonight, heaven is about to override every lie, every limitation, every spiritual frequency that kept you small. Your energy is being reset right now as you watch this. And what happened next made the darkness tremble. Do not resist what's coming. You felt it 3 nights ago, didn't you? That strange heaviness in your chest. Not grief, not anxiety, something else entirely. Something that made you sit up in bed at 2:47 a.m. and wonder if the very air around you had changed its frequency. You thought maybe you were getting sick, maybe it was stress. Maybe it was just another sleepless night in a season of too many sleepless nights. But it wasn't any of those things. Heaven had pressed pause on your timeline. And when heaven interrupts, chosen one, it's never subtle. See, while you were lying there in the dark, wondering why your spirit felt like it was vibrating at a different speed than your body, something extraordinary was happening in the realm you cannot see. The Ancient of Days had called an emergency session. Your file was pulled from the archives. Your name was spoken in the council chambers of eternity. And the decree that came forth shook both heaven and hell. It is time. Reset the frequency. Override the system. This one has endured enough in the wrong vibration. You didn't miss a step. Heaven stopped the music. The reset is not punishment. It's protection from what could have killed you in motion. For months now, you've been trying to function in cycles that expired long ago. Relationships that should have ended. Patterns that should have been buried. Mindsets that should have been cremated with your old identity. But you kept showing up, kept pushing through, kept pretending that normal was still an option for someone carrying the weight you carry. God watched you drag yourself through routines that no longer fit your spirit. He saw you forcing smiles in conversations that drained your soul. He witnessed you pouring your oil into cracked vessels, trying to fill broken cisterns, attempting to breathe life into what he had already pronounced dead. And finally, in his infinite mercy, he said, "Enough." The divine interruption you're experiencing right now isn't God being impatient with your progress. It's God being protective of your purpose. Because what you've been carrying, this calling, this anointing, this assignment written in the stars before time began, it cannot survive in the frequency you've been forced to operate in. You've been running on empty for so long, you forgot what it felt like to be full. You've been speaking a language of survival when you were created for a vocabulary of dominion. You've been walking in borrowed shoes when heaven tailored custom boots for the path ahead. But here's what the enemy didn't calculate: your willingness to let God interrupt everything. Most people, when heaven presses pause, they panic. They try to restart the old system. They beg for things to go back to normal. They resist the divine disruption because change, even holy change, feels like chaos to a weary soul. Not you. Something in your spirit recognized the signature of the Almighty the moment this reset began. You didn't fight it. You didn't run from it. You leaned into the unknown with a trust that scared hell itself. Because deep down, beneath all the confusion and exhaustion, you knew this wasn't an ending. This was an excavation. God is digging you out of frequencies that were never meant to house your fire. He's extracting you from atmospheres that suffocated your gifts. He's pulling you up from spiritual elevations that were too low for someone with your wingspan. The fatigue you've been feeling isn't weakness. It's your soul's way of saying, "I don't belong here anymore." The restlessness isn't anxiety, it's anticipation. Your spirit knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. You're being recalibrated for a dimension you've never walked in before. Tonight, as you sit in this divine interruption, I want you to understand something that will change how you see every uncomfortable moment ahead. God doesn't reset what he intends to discard. He only recalibrates what he plans to use with precision. You're not being broken down, you're being broken open. There's a difference between destruction and renovation, between demolition and reconstruction. God isn't tearing you apart to scatter the pieces. He's dismantling what doesn't belong so he can reveal what was always underneath. The version of you that's been struggling to keep up, trying to fit in, attempting to make sense of why nothing feels right anymore, that version is being lovingly retired. Not because it was wrong, but because it was incomplete. You've been operating at 30% of your spiritual capacity, and heaven refuses to let you stay there. This reset is going to feel strange for a while. You'll catch yourself reaching for old patterns that no longer exist. You'll find your mouth opening to speak words that no longer feel true. You'll walk toward doors that dissolve before you reach them. That's not confusion, that's confirmation. The old pathways are being sealed because they lead nowhere you need to go. What's rising in you now, this new frequency, this unfamiliar peace, this strange certainty that everything is about to change, that's not fantasy, that's prophecy in motion. God is uploading new software into your spiritual operating system. And just like any major upgrade, there's going to be a period of adjustment. But chosen one, what's coming online in you now will make every moment of discomfort worth it. Because you're not just getting a reset, you're getting a resurrection. You're not just receiving an upgrade. You're being given access to spiritual technology that most people never even know exists. The enemy thought this interruption would break you. He calculated that if he could make the transition uncomfortable enough, confusing enough, lonely enough, you'd beg God to put everything back the way it was. He was wrong. You didn't break. You didn't beg. You didn't retreat. Instead, you sat in the stillness and whispered the most dangerous prayer a chosen one can pray. Whatever you're doing, God, finish it. And in that moment, heaven smiled. Because patience under pressure is the final qualification for unlimited access. You just passed the test you didn't know you were taking. The divine interruption is complete. The reset has begun. And you, chosen one, are about to discover what you're truly capable of when every limitation is removed and every restriction is lifted. Do not resist what's coming. Resistance is the only thing that can slow this down. They thought discomfort would drive you back to your cage. They were wrong. What you've been calling restlessness isn't rebellion against God's planets. Your spirit recognizing that the old wineskins can no longer hold the new wine He's pouring into you. That agitation you feel when you walk into certain rooms, when you sit through conversations that once satisfied you, when you try to squeeze into relationships that used to feel like home, that's not ingratitude. That's divine displacement. You've outgrown the frame. For months, maybe years, you've been apologizing for feeling claustrophobic in spaces that others call blessed. You've been forcing smiles in circles where your spirit feels suffocated. You've been trying to shrink back into patterns that once fit, wondering why everything feels too small, too shallow, too limited. But here's what heaven wants you to understand tonight. You are not broken. You are being broken open. You've outgrown what was built to contain a smaller version of you. That job that used to challenge you now feels like wearing shoes 3 sizes too small. Those friendships that once energized you now drain you because your soul is operating on a different frequency. Even your prayers have changed. The old formulas feel hollow because your spirit has tasted something deeper, something that can't be contained in religious rhetoric. You're not backsliding, you're ascending. Think about a butterfly trying to crawl back into its cocoon. Impossible. The structure that once protected and nourished during the transformation phase becomes a prison when the metamorphosis is complete. What sheltered you during your season of becoming is now suffocating the being you've become. And the most beautiful part? God orchestrated this divine displacement. He didn't accidentally let you outgrow your comfort zones. He strategically expanded your capacity while you weren't looking. While you were focused on surviving the trials, He was secretly enlarging your territory, not just external territory, but internal landscape. Your mind can now hold thoughts that would have overwhelmed you 5 years ago. Your heart can carry burdens that would have crushed your former self. Your spirit can discern frequencies that were once beyond your range. You've been wondering why you can't enjoy the same entertainment anymore, why small talk feels like sandpaper against your soul, why you crave silence more than noise, solitude more than crowds. It's because your inner world has been remodeled for glory, and glory doesn't fit in ordinary spaces. The frame is cracking because what's inside is too magnificent to be contained. But here's where the enemy gets clever. He whispers that you're becoming prideful, isolated, difficult to please. He suggests that your discontent is evidence of spiritual decline rather than spiritual growth. He wants you to believe that outgrowing your old life is somehow betraying the journey that brought you here. That's a lie from the pit of hell. You're not abandoning your roots, you're transcending them. You're not rejecting your past, you're graduating from it. The very experiences that shaped you in the frame are now propelling you beyond it. And yes, this transition is lonely. Yes, it's disorienting. Yes, it comes with the loss of familiar comforts, predictable rhythms, relationships that can't stretch to accommodate your expansion. But every pioneer pays this price. Every reformer walks this path. Every vessel chosen for unusual assignment must first be emptied of the usual. You're being emptied not to diminish you, but to make room for immeasurable filling. The frame that held you was never meant to be your forever home. It was your training ground. And now that the training is complete, heaven is calling you to step into spaces that don't yet exist. Spaces that will be created around the shape of your obedience, carved out by the footsteps of your faith. That anxiety you feel isn't fear of the unknown, it's excitement disguised as nervousness. Your spirit recognizes the approaching fulfillment of promises that seem too good to be true. Your soul is trembling not with terror, but with anticipation of finally being able to breathe at full capacity. So stop apologizing for feeling uncomfortable in comfortable places. Stop forcing yourself to fit back into frameworks you've spiritually outgrown. Stop trying to reanimate dead seasons just because they feel safer than living ones. The frame served its purpose. It protected you during formation. It provided boundaries during your becoming. It held you together when you might have scattered under pressure. But formation is complete. Becoming has become. And what you are now cannot be compressed back into what contained you then. You're not losing your mind. You're finding your wingspan. You're not becoming impossible to please. You're becoming impossible to deceive. You're not growing cold toward people. You're growing warm toward purpose. The discomfort you're experiencing isn't dysfunction, it's divine testimony that the metamorphosis is complete. The cocoon is supposed to feel restrictive now. The shell is supposed to crack. The frame is supposed to give way. Because what's emerging can no longer be contained by what was built for what used to be. And heaven is applauding the expansion, even when earth misunderstands the breaking. Tonight, give yourself permission to outgrow what others expect you to remain content with. Give yourself permission to require more depth, more truth, more substance. Give yourself permission to walk away from anything that asks you to be smaller than what God has made you. The frame was never your destination. It was your launching pad, and the launch sequence has already begun. They thought exhaustion would be your surrender flag. They were wrong. You know that bone-deep tiredness, don't you? The kind that sleep couldn't fix. The kind that made you question if you were falling apart, losing your mind, or just getting too old to fight anymore. You've been carrying a weariness that had no name, no explanation, no cure. But tonight, heaven is pulling back the curtain on what's really been happening. You weren't tired because you were weak. You were tired because hell was terrified, and still, you didn't quit. Listen to me carefully. That exhaustion you've been carrying, it wasn't from your age. It wasn't from your circumstances. It wasn't even from your own battles. You've been absorbing spiritual shrapnel from a war you didn't even know you were fighting. Every morning you woke up drained. Every afternoon you felt that invisible weight pressing down on your chest. Every evening, when you couldn't understand why breathing felt like work, that was evidence. Evidence that you've been standing on the front lines of an invisible battlefield. While others slept peacefully, you were standing guard. While others lived in blissful ignorance, you were absorbing the spiritual temperature of the room, the family, the nation. You thought you were being paranoid. You thought you were overthinking. But what you called anxiety was actually divine radar. What felt like mental fog was spiritual intelligence, gathering data you weren't consciously processing. You've been a walking intercession station, a human lightning rod for spiritual warfare. And nobody taught you how to handle that kind of voltage. That's why your nervous system has been on high alert for decades. That's why crowds drain you. That's why you can walk into a room and immediately sense what's wrong, who's hurting, what spirit is operating. That's why you felt like you're carrying the weight of the world when all you wanted was to carry your own. But here's what the enemy never calculated. Every attack that was meant to drain, you actually strengthened your spiritual immune system. Every sleepless night sharpened your discernment. Every moment of feeling overwhelmed was actually you learning to carry supernatural capacity. You weren't breaking down. You were being broken in. Like a wild horse being trained for battle, you fought every bit of spiritual conditioning because it felt foreign to your flesh. But your spirit recognized its destiny. Your soul knew it was being prepared for something that required extraordinary endurance. And now, after years of wondering if you were losing your mind, heaven is confirming what your heart always knew. You weren't going crazy. You were going deeper. deeper into realms most people never access, deeper into sensitivity that most people couldn't survive, deeper into a calling that required the kind of spiritual muscle that only develops under pressure. That depression that hit you for no reason? That was you absorbing the spiritual atmosphere around dying dreams, broken marriages, lost hope. You became a sponge for sorrow that wasn't even yours. That anxiety that made no logical sense? That was your spirit picking up frequencies of fear, panic, and chaos that were being broadcast from the kingdom of darkness. You didn't choose to be a receiver. You were born with the antenna. And every day you stayed standing. Every morning you got back up. Every time you chose faith over fear, even when you felt like you were drowning, you were proving something to both heaven and hell. You were demonstrating the kind of staying power that makes angels weep and demons flee. They threw everything at you. Financial pressure that made no sense. Health issues that doctors couldn't explain. Relationships that drained you dry. Betrayals that cut deeper than they should have. Delays that felt like denials. Doors that slammed shut just when breakthrough seemed certain. But none of it was random. None of it was punishment. It was all strategic warfare designed to shut down your spiritual operating system before you fully came online. Because here's what they know that you're just discovering. When a chosen one operates at full capacity, the atmosphere of hell starts to crack. When you pray from that place of tested faith, strongholds that have stood for generations begin to crumble. When you speak from the authority that only comes through surviving what should have destroyed you, demons have to listen. That's why they tried to kill your energy at the source. They knew if you ever figured out that your sensitivity was a superpower, if you ever realized that your ability to feel everything was actually your ability to heal everything, if you ever understood that your weariness was proof of your worth, you'd become unstoppable. But tonight, the fatigue is lifting. Tonight, the spiritual fog is clearing. Tonight, you're not just recovering your energy, you're discovering what you've been carrying all along. You've been tired because you've been fighting for people who didn't even know they needed fighting for. You've been exhausted because you've been standing in the gap for a generation that forgot how to stand for themselves. You've been drained because you've been pouring out intercession like water in a desert, watering ground that looked barren but was actually pregnant with promise. And now, in this very moment, heaven is saying, "Well done. The night watch is over. The dawn has come." Your energy is being restored not just to what it was, but to what it was always meant to be. You weren't called to survive, you were called to thrive. You weren't born to endure, you were born to overcome. And the war that tried to exhaust you into submission has actually equipped you for victory. The weariness is breaking, the burden is lifting, and what rises in its place will shock even you. Because warriors don't just fight battles, they finish them. They thought they had you mapped out, every weakness cataloged, every trigger documented, every pattern of pain memorized and filed away in their spiritual database. But here's what happened while you were crying in the dark. Chosen One Heaven was performing surgery on your soul's fingerprint. You see, the enemy operates like a spiritual GPS system. He tracks you by your frequency, your emotional signature, the vibration of your wounds. That broken heart from 20 years ago, he's been using it as a homing beacon. That fear of abandonment, it was his favorite coordinate. Every time you'd start to rise, every time breakthrough felt close, he'd simply punch in your old spiritual address and launch another attack. But something extraordinary happened in the midnight hours of your transformation. While you thought God was silent, he was actually reprogramming your entire spiritual identity. Not fixing your, placing you. Not healing your old signature, rehearsing it completely and writing a new one in fire. The demons are circling tonight, Chosen One, but the GPS can't locate you. Heaven has cloaked your coordinates in fire. You know that confusion you've been feeling lately? That sense that you don't even recognize yourself anymore? That's not disorientation. That's divine relocation. God moved your spirit to a frequency the enemy has never encountered before. You're not the same person who entered that wilderness. You're not even the same soul who cried those tears last month. Heaven issued you new spiritual identification. Your old name, the one written in pain, carved by trauma, whispered by accusers, that name has been dissolved. The Ancient of Days took his finger and wrote a new name across your forehead in letters of light. A name that demons cannot pronounce. A name that makes principalities stutter. They're searching for someone who no longer exists. Listen carefully. That depression that used to find you like a heat-seeking missile, it's flying blind now. Those familiar spirits that knew exactly when to whisper doubt into your ear, they're calling a disconnected number. The fear that used to paralyze you at 3 a.m., it's knocking on the door of an empty house. Because you're not living at that address anymore. God didn't renovate your old dwelling. He built you a new mansion on higher ground. And the deed is signed in blood that conquered death itself. The enemy still has your old coordinates, but when he sends his assignments, they're attacking a ghost, a shadow, an echo of who you used to be. But here's the beautiful mystery. Chosen one. While hell was mapping your old wounds, heaven was mapping your new authority. While demons were studying your past failures, angels were documenting your future victories. While principalities were calculating your breaking point, the Almighty was calculating your breakthrough. You've become spiritually untraceable. That familiar cycle of delay that used to trap you, it's spinning its wheels in an empty parking lot. Those recurring dreams that tormented your sleep, they're projecting onto a screen with no audience. The voices that convinced you that you'd never be enough, they're echoing in chambers you'll never visit again. God performed the ultimate identity theft. He stole you from your own suffering and relocated you to a realm your enemies cannot access. You know what's driving them insane? You're still you. Your heart, your love, your compassion, your fire. But you're operating from a completely different spiritual jurisdiction. You're under new management, new protection, new authority, and the old rule book they used to manipulate you, it's been burned to ashes. This is why you've been feeling so different lately. Why certain people suddenly seem foreign to you. Why places that once drained you now feel powerless. Why the old triggers bounce off you like rain on a window. You're not becoming cold, you're becoming untouchable. The frequency you now emit is so foreign to the kingdom of darkness that their weapons are designed for someone who no longer exists. They're shooting arrows at coordinates that lead to empty air. They're dialing numbers that route to silence. They're searching for a signature that was erased by the hand of the Most High. But here's what's truly beautiful about your new spiritual identity, chosen one. While you've become invisible to your enemies, you've become unmistakable to your destiny. Every door meant for you recognizes your new frequency instantly. Every person assigned to your path feels the shift in your atmosphere before you even speak. Every blessing prepared for your future is now perfectly aligned with who you've become. You're not lost in this transformation. You're found. Found by purpose. Found by calling. Found by a God who loved you enough to give you a completely fresh start without making you relocate to a different planet. The old you couldn't have handled what's coming. The old frequency would have short-circuited under the voltage of your new assignment. But this version, this refined, recalibrated, divinely reprogrammed version, you're built for what's ahead. So when the familiar voices of doubt try to call your name, don't answer. That's not your name anymore. When the old patterns try to hook into your life, let them find nothing. You don't live there anymore. When yesterday's demons come knocking with yesterday's accusations, let them discover that yesterday's person moved out and left no forwarding address. Heaven has rewritten your signature, chosen one. And this new name, this fire-branded, glory-soaked, angel-guarded identity, It comes with authority that hell has never seen before. The enemy is still looking for who you used to be, but that person is gone. And who you are now, you're about to find out just how powerful, untraceable really is. You've been watching it crumble, haven't you? One by one, the pillars of your old life are collapsing. The friendships that once felt like home now feel hollow. The routines that gave you comfort now drain your soul. Even the blessings you thought were from God are slipping through your fingers like sand. And you're standing there, confused, wondering if you did something wrong, wondering if God is punishing you, wondering if this spiritual reset is actually spiritual sabotage. But listen to me, chosen one. Listen with every fiber of your being. What's falling away from your life right now isn't destruction, it's divine surgery. You begged God to grow you. You cried out for transformation. You pleaded for Him to take you deeper, higher, further than you'd ever been. Well, this is what growth costs. This is what elevation demands. This is what happens when heaven decides you're ready for the next dimension of your calling. Let it fall. Even the good things, even the blessed things, even the things that once fed your spirit. Because even good things become poison in the wrong season. You see, there's a spiritual law that most believers never understand. It's the law of sacred severance. When God prepares to elevate a vessel, He doesn't just add new things. He removes everything that cannot survive the altitude. He cuts away everything that would weigh you down in the stratosphere of His glory. That friend who suddenly grew distant, they weren't equipped for where you're going. That ministry opportunity that dissolved overnight, it would have become a cage disguised as a calling. That financial blessing that slipped away, it was teaching you to depend on the provider, not the provision. God isn't taking from you. He's making room in you. You've been carrying dead weight for so long, you forgot what it felt like to fly. You've been dragging corpses of expired relationships, outdated dreams, and outgrown identities. And heaven looked down and said, "Enough. My child deserves to soar." So the divine surgeon picked up his scalpel, not to wound you, but to free you. Every cut was calculated. Every loss was liberation. Every goodbye was actually God saying, "I love you too much to let you stay small." But it hurts, doesn't it? Of course it does. Surgery always hurts, even when it saves your life. You're grieving things that needed to die. You're mourning losses that were actually gains. You're crying over endings that were actually beginnings in disguise. And that's okay. Grieve well. Let the tears fall. Let the sadness wash over you like waves against the shore. Because grief is not weakness, it's worship. It's your soul acknowledging that something sacred is happening, even when your mind can't comprehend it. You loved those people. You treasured those seasons. You believed in those dreams. Of course, it hurts to watch them fade. But here's what your pain is telling you. You have a heart that loves deeply. You have a soul that commits completely. You have a spirit that believes passionately. And those are not flaws to fix, they're gifts to steward. God isn't punishing your capacity to love. He's redirecting it. He's not breaking your ability to dream. He's expanding it. He's not destroying your faith. He's refining it. The energy reset happening in your life right now is God's way of saying, "I see how beautifully you loved what was temporary. Now let me show you how to love what's eternal." You see, chosen one, you've been loving with limited vision. You've been pouring your precious oil into vessels that could only hold so much. You've been singing your sacred songs to audiences who could only hear the melody, not the message. But tonight, God is cleaning house. He's removing the small containers so He can bring you oceans. He's silencing the shallow audiences so He can give you stadiums. He's taking away the temporary so He can entrust you with the eternal. This isn't loss. This is liberation. This isn't abandonment. This is advancement. This isn't God forgetting you. This is God preparing you for something so magnificent, so weighty, so holy, that your current life couldn't contain it. Let it fall off, beloved. Let the old skin shed. Let the expired agreements dissolve. Let the outgrown relationships fade into memory. Because what's coming next requires all of you. Every ounce of your attention, every drop of your oil, every beat of your heart. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot love two kingdoms. You cannot build two legacies. God is calling you to choose. Not between good and evil. That choice was made long ago. He's calling you to choose between good and great, between blessed and anointed, between comfortable and consecrated, and deep in your spirit, you already know what you're choosing. You're choosing the narrow path that leads to the wide place. You're choosing the temporary pain that births eternal gain. You're choosing to trust the hand that wounds you is the same hand that heals you. Let it fall off. All of it. Without guilt. Without shame. Without apology. Because you're not losing your life. You're finding it. You're not being stripped bare. You're being dressed in glory. You're not falling apart. You're falling into place. The place you were created for. The place you were destined for. The place that's been waiting for you since before time began. Let it fall, chosen one, and watch what God builds in the empty space. It will take your breath away. They thought emptying you would hollow you out. Instead, it made room for holy fire. You, chosen one, have been walking through what felt like spiritual demolition. Piece by piece, layer by layer, everything familiar has been stripped away. Your old responses, your comfortable patterns, even the voice you used to recognize as your own, all of it has been dismantled with surgical precision. And in those moments when you felt like you were disappearing, when you wondered if there would be anything left of who you were, heaven was working with blueprints you couldn't see. This wasn't destruction. This was divine construction. While you thought you were being diminished, God was actually expanding your capacity. Every wound that wouldn't heal became a frequency receptor. Every betrayal that cut deep became a clarity amplifier. Every night you couldn't sleep became a training ground for spiritual sensitivity. You weren't falling apart, you were being rewired for a voltage that your old spiritual system couldn't handle. Listen to me carefully. The trauma you survived didn't break you. It became spiritual voltage. That marriage that nearly destroyed you, it taught you to discern the difference between love and manipulation with laser accuracy. That job that crushed your spirit, it showed you how power without character operates, so you'd never become what wounded you. Those friends who abandoned you when you needed them most, they cleared space for divine connections that won't drain your light to fuel their darkness. Every scar became a sensor. Every tear became a tuning fork. Every sleepless night became a masterclass in hearing what others miss. You didn't just survive, you've been upgraded. Your body is different now. You feel things in rooms that others walk through blindly. Your nervous system has been recalibrated to detect spiritual atmospheres. When deception enters a conversation, your chest tightens. When someone carries hidden pain, your heart responds before they speak. When God is about to move, your spirit stirs hours before the manifestation. This isn't anxiety. This is accuracy. You've become a living instrument, finely tuned to frequencies that most people can't even perceive. The very sensitivity that others called too much has become your greatest weapon. You don't just hear words anymore, you hear intentions. You don't just see faces, you see spirits. You don't just enter rooms, you shift atmospheres. Your thoughts move differently now. Where chaos used to live, clarity has taken residence. The questions that once tormented you have been replaced by knowing that doesn't need explanation. You've stopped asking, why me? Because you finally understand. Why not me? You were built for this level of spiritual warfare. You were designed to carry this weight with grace. The overthinking that used to exhaust you has been transformed into strategic insight. Your mind doesn't race anymore, it calculates. Every situation you encounter, your spirit runs rapid analysis. What's the real agenda here? What spirit is driving this conversation? What's trying to access me through this person? You've become dangerous to deception because you've learned to think like heaven thinks. But here's what will shock you most about this upgrade. Your voice carries voltage now. You don't need to shout to be heard anymore. You don't need to explain yourself to be understood. When you speak from that deep place, that place where fire meets peace, entire rooms shift frequency. Conversations change direction. Hearts crack open. Lies lose their power. You've stopped talking to convince people and started speaking to free them. There's a new authority in your tone that doesn't come from education or experience. It comes from having been broken down to your foundation and rebuilt with materials from heaven's supply. When you say no now, it lands with the weight of divine backing. When you say yes, it opens doors that human hands couldn't budge. You're not being emptied, you're being tuned. And once tuned, you'll speak and entire realms will bow. This is why the enemy fought so hard to keep you silent. This is why depression tried to convince you that your voice didn't matter. This is why isolation whispered that nobody cared what you had to say. Because somewhere in the archives of hell, there's a file with your name on it, and written across the top in red letters. Do not let this one find their voice. Too late. You found it. And it's loaded with supernatural ammunition. The words that come out of your mouth now don't just communicate, they legislate. They don't just describe reality, they decree it. When you pray, things move in dimensions others can't see. When you speak truth over someone's life, chains snap in the spiritual realm. When you declare what God says, heaven rushes to confirm it. You've become a walking broadcasting station for the voice of the Almighty. But understand this, the upgrade came with a price. You can't go back to shallow conversations. You can't tolerate fake friendships. You can't sit in rooms where compromise is comfortable and pretend you don't feel the spiritual nausea. Your new frequency won't allow it. You've been ruined for anything less than authentic. This means some people will feel uncomfortable around you now. And that's not your burden to carry. Your presence alone will trigger conviction in hearts that have been hiding from truth. Your peace will expose their chaos. Your clarity will reveal their confusion. Not because you're trying to make them uncomfortable, but because light always reveals what's been hiding in darkness. You're not responsible for their reaction to your transformation. You're only responsible for stewarding what God has built in you. So stop apologizing for your sensitivity. Stop dimming your light to make others comfortable. Stop explaining why you can't tolerate what you used to accept. The sacred upgrade you've received is not for your entertainment, it's for your assignment. You've been precision engineered for this moment in history. Every circuit in your spirit has been tested, every wire carefully placed, every frequency perfectly calibrated. You are not a rough draft of who you're supposed to become. You are the finished product, walking in divine efficiency. And now that the upgrade is complete, heaven is ready to plug you into your purpose. The same sensitivity that felt like a curse will become your greatest gift. The same depth that isolated you will draw the right people like a magnet. The same voice that trembled with uncertainty will speak with the authority of someone who has been to hell and back and chose to return with healing for others. You didn't just survive the reset. You emerged from it as a weapon of mass reconstruction. This is your sacred upgrade, chosen one. And the world has been waiting for what you're about to release. They thought the pressure would crush you. Instead, it forged you into something indestructible. You feel it now, don't you? That burning in your chest that won't go away. That heat rising from your bones like incense before the throne. You've been calling it restlessness, calling it anxiety, calling it everything except what it actually is, the fire of God marking you as His own. This isn't the gentle warmth they sing about in Sunday morning hymns. This is holy combustion. This is the flame that brands cattle. Except you're not cattle, you're a weapon. And heaven is not anointing you to be liked. It's branding you to be lethal. You thought the trials were meant to break you. You thought the isolation was punishment. You thought the sleepless nights were random spiritual attacks. But every single moment of heat, every burning season, every furnace experience was God calibrating your internal temperature. He was teaching you to burn without being consumed. Because what's happening to you tonight isn't just renewal, it's recognition. Heaven is officially claiming you. And when heaven claims someone, it leaves a mark that cannot be faked, cannot be copied, cannot be removed. The fire you're feeling, it's not coming to hurt you. It's coming to seal you. You've watched others carry anointing like jewelry, putting it on for special occasions, taking it off when it gets uncomfortable. But what's burning through you now won't be something you wear. It will be something you are. You won't turn it on and off. It will turn you into a living flame. Don't mistake sacred fire for comfort. Don't expect this marking to make your life easier. Fire doesn't make things easier, it makes them permanent. It transforms. It purifies. It consumes everything that doesn't belong and leaves only what's eternal. You're being branded with irrevocable purpose. Look at your hands. Right now. Look at them. Those hands that have wiped so many tears, that have folded in prayer through countless dark nights, that have served when no one was watching. Those hands are about to carry fire. Not metaphorically. Literally. Every person you touch, every surface you bless, every door you open will feel the residue of what heaven is pouring into you. You won't have to announce your calling anymore. Your presence will announce it. You won't have to prove your authority. The fire will prove it. People will sense something different the moment you walk into a room, and they won't be able to explain it. But you'll know. It's the mark. It's the seal. It's the fire that cannot be hidden. This is why the enemy fought you so hard in recent months. He could sense the appointment coming. He could smell the smoke before the flame appeared. Every attack, every whisper of defeat, every attempt to make you quit it was hell's desperate effort to prevent this very moment. Because once you're sealed with fire, you become untouchable. Not untouchable as in protected from all, hardship untouchable as in unconquerable. The fire makes you flame-proof. What once burned you now feeds you. What once wounded you now strengthens you. You become dangerous to every force that operates in darkness because you carry the light that exposes everything. But here's what you need to understand about this fire. It demands everything. Not just your Sundays, not just your good days, not just your convenient moments. It demands your complete surrender. It burns away your need for approval, your craving for comfort, your addiction to being understood. It leaves only what's pure, what's powerful, what's permanently aligned with heaven. You can't play with holy fire. You can't negotiate with it. You can't control it. You can only host it. And hosting the fire of God means your life becomes an altar. Everything you do, everywhere you go, every word you speak becomes an offering. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because fire transforms everything it touches. The cost of carrying this fire is your former self. The person who worried about what others thought. The person who needed permission to obey God. The person who apologized for their convictions. That version of you cannot survive what's being poured into you. Not because God is cruel, but because fire only burns in clean vessels. You've been purified through pain. You've been refined through rejection. You've been sanctified through silence. And now at the end of the process comes the sealing, the final mark that says, "This one belongs to me." When Moses came down from the mountain, his face shone so brightly that people couldn't look at him directly. When the disciples were filled with fire, they spoke with such authority that thousands were converted in a single day. When Elijah carried the flame, he called down fire from heaven that consumed not just the sacrifice, but the altar itself. That's the lineage you're stepping into. That's the fire you're being marked with. Not the fire of emotion, not the fire of enthusiasm, but the fire of divine possession. The fire that says you no longer belong to yourself. You belong to the mission. And the mission is not to blend in. The mission is not to make everyone comfortable. The mission is to burn so brightly that darkness has no choice but to flee. To carry such purity that compromise becomes impossible. To walk with such authority that demons recognize your footsteps from a distance. You feel it sealing you even now. That heat, that pressure, that sense of something eternal being etched into your spirit. Don't resist it. Don't try to cool it down. Let it burn. Let it mark you. Let it transform you into something the world has never seen but desperately needs. The fire isn't here to hurt you. It's here to make you holy. And holiness, true holiness, is not gentleness. It's power. It's authority. It's the ability to speak one word and watch kingdoms shift. Heaven is not asking if you're ready. Heaven is declaring that you are chosen. The fire is proof. The seal is evidence. And from this moment forward, you don't walk as someone hoping to be used by God. You walk as someone who has been claimed by God, marked by God, sealed with fire that burns forever. The branding is complete. The fire has spoken, and now, chosen one, you burn. They thought the reset would make you gentler. They were wrong. You see, chosen one, there's something the world doesn't understand about divine transformation. They think healing means returning to who you were before the pain. They think restoration means going back to your old ways, your old patterns, your old desperate need for acceptance. But heaven doesn't operate on earth's definitions. What happened to you tonight wasn't rehabilitation. It was weaponization. You weren't restored to be the same person with better circumstances. You were reconstructed to be a completely different force in the spiritual realm. The reset didn't repair your old identity. It activated a new one. And tomorrow morning when you wake up, you're going to feel it immediately. The first thing you'll notice is the silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of authority. You won't need to fill every moment with words anymore. You won't need to explain yourself, defend yourself, or prove yourself to rooms full of people who never had the spiritual capacity to recognize your worth in the first place. Your silence has become a weapon, and when you do speak, the atmosphere will shift. Not because you're louder, but because you're deeper. Your words will carry a weight that wasn't there before, a gravity that pulls truth out of hiding and forces pretense to its knees. You'll speak less, but accomplish more. You'll say fewer words, but they'll land like thunderclaps in the spirit. People are going to notice the change immediately, but they won't be able to name it. They'll see you walk into rooms differently, not with arrogance, but with awareness. You'll move like someone who knows something the rest of the room doesn't, like someone who's been in the throne room and returned with instructions. Your posture will speak before your mouth opens. Your presence will preach before you say a single word, because you're not just healed. You're dangerous. The old you used to react to everything. Every slight, every criticism, every attempt to diminish your light would send you into emotional chaos. You'd defend, explain, justify, plead your case to people who were never assigned to judge it. But that version of you died in the reset. The new you doesn't react. You respond. And there's a universe of difference between the two. Reaction is emotion without wisdom. Response is wisdom with authority. Reaction gives away your power. Réponse démonstrates it. You're going to shock people with your steadiness. When they try to provoke you with the same old triggers, you'll look at them with the calm of someone who's seen behind the veil. When they attempt to drag you into drama, you'll decline the invitation with a peace that will unnerve them. When they expect you to fight, you'll smile. When they expect you to explain, you'll simply walk away. And your walking away will feel like an earthquake in the spirit. See, the reset didn't just change your energy. It changed your frequency. You're no longer operating on the wavelength of wounded people trying to wound others. You're no longer transmitting on the channel of broken people trying to break what they can't understand. You've been tuned to heaven's frequency, and heaven doesn't argue with darkness. It doesn't negotiate with demons. It doesn't plead with principalities. Heaven simply speaks, and reality rearranges itself. That's the authority you're walking in now. Not borrowed, not imitated, but imparted. Placed directly into your spiritual DNA by the one who reset your entire existence tonight. You'll find yourself knowing things you were never taught, seeing things others miss, sensing shifts in atmospheres before they manifest in conversations. Your discernment has been sharpened to a razor's edge. But here's what will surprise you most. You won't feel the need to prove it anymore. The old you would have announced every revelation, shared every vision, proclaimed every prophetic insight to anyone who would listen. But the new you understands that real authority doesn't announce itself. It simply operates. You'll know when to speak and when to remain silent. You'll sense when to engage and when to withdraw. You'll feel when someone is sent by God and when they're sent by their own agenda. And you'll respond accordingly, without guilt, without explanation, without apology. Because you're not restored to be soft. You're weaponized to be silent thunder. The battles that used to exhaust you won't even register as battles anymore. The people who used to drain your energy will simply bounce off the spiritual armor you now wear. The situations that used to throw you into confusion will be met with a clarity so sharp it cuts through deception like light through darkness. You've been given eyes that see past the performance to the heart, ears that hear the spirit behind the words, a mind that processes both the natural and supernatural simultaneously, and a heart that beats in rhythm with heaven's will, not earth's chaos. This is what it means to walk differently. Your feet will still touch the same ground, but you'll be walking from a different realm. Your voice will still use the same vocal cords, but it will carry authority from a higher court. Your hands will still perform the same tasks, but they'll be guided by wisdom that doesn't come from textbooks or experience. It comes from intimacy with the one who reset everything about you tonight. And the most beautiful part, you won't have to try to be different. You won't have to remember to act with authority or remind yourself to walk in power. It will be as natural as breathing, because it's not something you're doing, it's something you've become. The old wineskin couldn't contain the new wine, so heaven gave you a completely new container, a new spiritual infrastructure, a new operating system that runs on divine power instead of human effort. Tomorrow, when you step into the world, you won't be the same person trying harder. You'll be a different person entirely. And the difference will be felt before it's seen, sensed before it's understood, and feared by darkness before it's celebrated by light. This time, chosen one, you will walk differently. Not because you learn new steps, but because you've been given new feet. Not because you changed your mind, but because you've been given the mind of Christ. Not because you found your voice, but because heaven placed thunder in your throat. The reset is complete. The transformation is finished. The new you has officially entered the building, and nothing will ever be the same again. Chosen one, as we come to the close of this divine encounter, I need you to hold on to 3 unshakable truths tonight. First, remember this: the energy reset you've experienced isn't temporary, it's permanent. Heaven doesn't do practice runs or trial periods. When God resets your spiritual frequency, when He recalibrates your soul, when He downloads new authority into your spirit, that transformation is sealed for eternity. You will never again be the person you were before this moment. That version of you has been lovingly laid to rest, and the warrior rising in their place carries the fingerprints of the Almighty. Second, understand this: every attack you've endured, every season of silence you've walked through, every moment when you felt forgotten, none of it was wasted. It was all preparation for this reset. The enemy meant it for evil, but God meant it for your empowerment. Your pain became your platform. Your wilderness became your training ground. And now, you're not just healed, you're dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. Third, never forget this. You didn't survive by accident. You were preserved by assignment. God kept you through every storm, not just to tell your story, but to become His story. You are living proof that heaven doesn't abandon its chosen ones. You are breathing evidence that divine timing is perfect timing. And you are walking testimony that what the enemy tries to destroy, God transforms into His greatest weapons. But here's what I want you to know with absolute certainty tonight. You are not walking this road alone. Even in your most isolated moments, even in those 3 a.m. hours when the weight felt unbearable, you were never truly alone. The same God who reset your energy tonight has been orchestrating every detail of your journey. He's been positioning people, preparing doors, and clearing pathways for your next season. And there's something beautiful happening right now, even as you're watching this. There are other chosen ones just like you who needed to hear these exact words tonight. They're sitting in their living rooms, lying in their beds, standing in their kitchens, feeling that same divine stirring in their spirits. You're part of a remnant, a holy community that spans across time zones and circumstances, all united by one thing. You've been marked by heaven for such a time as this. This community is praying with you right now. We're interceding for your breakthrough, standing in the gap for your healing, and believing God for your complete restoration. You don't have to carry this weight alone anymore. You don't have to fight these battles in isolation. There's an army of believers who understand your journey because they've walked it too. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really consider this. If God has brought you this far, through this much, and reset your very energy tonight, what makes you think He's going to stop now? What makes you think He's going to abandon the very vessel He spent years preparing for this moment? Now, before we close, I want to pray over you, and I want you to know that as I speak these words, I'm not just speaking to a screen or a camera. I'm speaking directly to your spirit, as if I'm standing right there with you, with my hand on your shoulder, looking you in the eyes with the love of a father and the faith of a warrior. Let us pray together. Father God, I come before your throne tonight on behalf of every chosen one who has received this message. Lord, you see them right where they are, in their pain, in their confusion, in their moments of doubt, and their seasons of waiting. You see the tears they've cried when no one was watching. You've heard every whispered prayer, every desperate plea, every moment when they wondered if you were still there. And tonight, Lord, I ask you to confirm what you've already done in the Spirit. Let them feel your presence like a warm blanket around their shoulders. Let them sense your peace washing over every anxious thought. Let them know, beyond any shadow of doubt, that they are loved, they are chosen, and they are not forgotten. God, I pray that you would open doors that no man can shut. I pray that you would provide for every need, heal every wound, and restore every broken dream. Give them supernatural strength for tomorrow's challenges. Give them divine wisdom for difficult decisions. Give them holy boldness to walk in the authority you've placed upon their lives. Protect them, Lord. Shield them from the attacks of the enemy. Surround them with your angels. Let every weapon formed against them not just fail, but backfire to work for their good. And remind them daily that their identity isn't found in their circumstances, it's found in your unchanging love. Bless them beyond their ability to contain it. Surprise them with your goodness. Show up in ways they never expected. And use their testimony to set others free who are walking through their own resets. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. Now, chosen one, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let us know. What resonated most with you tonight? What part of this message felt like God speaking directly to your situation? Don't hold back. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Share your heart. Ask your questions. Tell us how we can pray for you specifically. And please, if this message stirred something in your spirit, share it with someone who needs it. You know someone, maybe a family member, a friend, a coworker who's been struggling, who's been feeling forgotten, who needs to know that God is still moving in their life. Be the vessel that carries this hope to them. Sometimes God uses us to deliver His messages to people who wouldn't have found them otherwise. Before you go, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying with me through this entire journey tonight. In a world full of distractions, you chose to invest this time in your spirit, in your relationship with God, in your own healing and growth. That decision honors both God and yourself. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Not because I need the numbers, but because God is releasing more messages like this one. Messages specifically designed for chosen ones who need confirmation, direction, and hope. You don't want to miss what He's saying next. And remember this as you close your eyes tonight. Your reset is complete. Your new season has begun. And the best chapters of your story are still being written. You are loved. You are chosen. You are not alone. And you are exactly where God needs you to be. Sweet dreams, warrior. Tomorrow, you wake up different, in His love and for His glory.